We've done Make 2D. We've done a Make 2D operation. We've done a LivePaint operation. We've added some patterns and colors to the drawings here. Now I want to export this actually to a file that I can use in InDesign to organize a larger layout. So let's save this as an AI. I'll call this views compiled. Keep it as an AI file. Also notice that if I were to change this, say, to PDF, I can choose just singular artboards that I want to use to export this. So say I have 8 artboards in here, and 4 of them are just test areas that I've been drawing things and testing patterns and stuff, but I don't want those to export. I can just choose the range that I want to export as a PDF. If you export it as an AI file, it will keep all the drawing geometry in there. We want it as an AI for a particular reason when we get into InDesign. Let's click Save. Views compiled, save. All right. That's fine. All right, so everybody open up, or if you're following along live, open up InDesign. If not, you can check back on it after I'm on the video. Okay. How many of you are familiar with InDesign? Most of you are. You've started to use it for stuff here? Okay, good. How many people feel like they're an expert at InDesign? Anybody? This guy, I know it. I knew it. You really strike me as an expert in InDesign. So, you're correct. InDesign's awesome. It obviously is more of a layout program, of course, but relating to adding that extra. This will happen later in the semester here, but adding that extra layer of crispness to a publication or a drawing layout, bringing all these drawings that you've worked hard on together, it's an immensely powerful program, and it's a good way to keep things organized. So in InDesign, on the entry screen here, let's just create a new document, and let's make the document a custom size. Let's say our document name, let's call this, I think, ArtD, so 24 inches by 36 inches. Width 24, height 36, just for right now, let's say OK. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with portrait-oriented prints, but that's where all these layouts have been going. I'm going to unclick facing pages. That's more useful when you're creating a booklet or a spread of something. In this particular case, we're just putting our final kind of drawing, singular drawing page on this. So unclick facing pages. Let's click the gutter stuff and the margin-related stuff. We can adjust later. So for now, we'll just leave that as it is. Let's click OK. All right. So now we're in InDesign. It's very bright. We have our layout here. What I want to do is add the drawings from Illustrator to this InDesign file and kind of organize them on the page in a way that makes sense. And then we can add text if we need to, or a title or something. So a couple things quickly to notice. We have our Pages tab here, just like in the other Adobe files. The master page component of Pages is a nice function if you have multiple spreads. Say that you wanted to have a title block or your name or a page number or something attached to every sheet that you're going to be printing. Say you're printing 4 of these things. In my master page, if I double click on the master page, I could add information here. Let's say I wanted to say, all right, I'm going to make a text box. That's the T button here. The functionality of InDesign drawing shapes and things is very similar to Illustrator. So that's why I'm not rehashing what I'm pressing as I'm clicking buttons here. But if you have a question about it, just let me know. So let's say Andrew McGee. Let's say I have a date in here, 2018-0925, digital techniques. OK, and I want this to be on every page. Let's resize this so it reads a little bit better. Maybe even a little bit bigger than that. And then let's say I can switch the text here. I can switch the font if I want to. Just for the sake of simplicity, let's just have it be something sans serif Arial. Maybe I'll bold my name. And I'll make these lighter. Okay, so that's in my master file. If I were to say put this in the lower left margin here, if I type Control-Alt-C, that will fit my frame, my text frame, to the text box that I'm making so that I can just more accurately relocate it to the corner, just so that it's out of the way of the other drawings that I'm going to be making. So now another thing to note here is if I go back to my main page file, this kind of footnote has appeared on that page. If I were to create a new page, it's going to create that note on every single page that I make from here on out. If you ever needed to edit that master file data, say I wanted to add additional information, as a reminder for myself for the future, notice that now if I go back to these other files, that drawings here thing has been applied to each page. So the master file, the master page is very nice in that you can set up a template basically for your drawings so that they're consistent. You can adjust your guides if you want to. You can add sort of ruler guides to things, just pulling, left click pulling from the edges here. I could add like a guide to the middle. Everything in InDesign should kind of clip to something. So as you're dragging, question?
Yeah, when you're dragging the guide lines, is there a way that you can kind of like offset them?
Yes. So you can do this a couple ways. So if you you can very accurately locate a guide on the scene by, see that X number is changing along the top. If I change this, let's change our, let's see here. I want to change the units. Oh, I've gone into the wrong spot here. There we go. If I click on my ruler, I can change this to any of these. So I'm just going to say inches decimal for the sake of this moment. So this is telling me that I have this ruler at 4.7 inches. I could set this up so that it's at 1. I could then hold Alt and drag it to copy it at equal intervals, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I could also, once I've copied it once, I believe if I type, you should be able to mimic that last command so that you can copy them across the page very quickly. You could also do this. You could create several of these guides, and then, just for the sake of understanding the layout, and then let's say that I wanted to reorient these guides so they're all equally spaced along the edges here. I'll get the edge guides that I have clicked. So I want all these to be equally spaced. I can go to my Align tool here and click the Align along, basically equally align it. So it's letting me, all the objects in that moment, all the objects in that selection are aligned to that area. So that also works for drawings. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go back to my main page, and you'll notice again the grids are now on everything, which is nice. If the grid ever is too much, you can just type W, and that goes into preview mode. Also, Shift W will go into presentation mode, so you can quickly flip through your drawings just to get a sense of what it will look like once it's printed. But so the toggle between the working mode and the preview mode is really useful to see what's going on. All right, so I'm going to quickly get into here a couple drawings so that we can lay these out. I'm going to type Control-D to place an object. I'm going to navigate to my model views, views compiled, open that up. And you'll notice as I did that, it just defaulted to the first layout that's in that drawing. If I wanted to have more control over that, I can go back and type Control-D and make sure that my Show Import Options is on. So views compiled, Show Import Options, and what that will do is allow me to cycle through the pages that I created in InDesign. Another thing to note is generally by default, InDesign will crop to the extent of the drawing information that's on a page, but it won't necessarily crop to the page that it's getting pulled from, which can be problematic depending on if you had a specific location for something across multiple pages and you want that to be in the same place on your print. So notice here, if I go back to the first page, it's only going to import the selected geometry. It's not importing the 11 by 17. On the next page, it's only importing the selected geometry. It's actually even a little bit offset from what the 11 by 17 was. So if I wanted to make sure that these are getting imported at the same size as the 11 by 17 sheet that it was on the other file, I change my crop to media, and then that will change it to the 11 by 17 page throughout. So as I said when we were in Illustrator, it didn't really matter that much for me for these smaller ones because they're kind of scaleless, and we're going to resize them probably in this area anyways. So actually, for the sake of this, I'm going to keep it at not at crop, I'm sorry, at bounding box. So let's say OK. And so now that drawing, we can import that drawing into, I'm just going to turn W on so we can see that. So that drawing has an edge, has a bounding, has a frame to it. We can resize that drawing if we want to, just by holding Control-Shift and dragging the corner of the frame. That makes it bigger or smaller. You could also, say you wanted to resize the frame and only show a portion of the drawing inside of it. You can use again, the direct selection versus the move button, the black arrow versus the white. If I choose the white arrow and I select inside of the box, inside of the frame, it's only selecting the drawing geometry. And now I can resize that in the same way that I had resized the frame geometry. But as soon as I go outside of my frame, it's going to cut off that geometry. So basically, the difference here is with the black arrow, you can adjust the frame. So I can just readjust that frame to show the geometry that's hidden. The direct white selection arrow is allowing me to position my drawing within that frame. So again, say I wanted to, all right, also to quickly resize the frame or the content within the frame that you've made, there's a series of fit buttons along the top when your frame is selected. So you can hover over any of these and they should give you a readout of what they're supposed to do. And it's not cooperating with me right now, but basically this should fit the frame, the content proportionally to the frame. So basically if my image has come in too large for the frame I've created, I could quickly press that button and it will fit my drawing to that frame.
Which button was that?
So that was this button here. Basically, there's a series of, when you have, just like in Illustrator or Rhino or CAD, when you have a certain type of object selected, a series of other options for it will come up across the top. So always kind of check that. You can fit it to different parts of the page. You can shrink it to the corner. You could fit it proportionally, which you could stretch the thing if you wanted to. I think for the sake of what we're doing right now, fitting it to the frameworks is the easiest. But so let's say we have a drawing there, but we wanted to highlight a few aspects of this drawing in a little bit more detail. I could, holding Alt, I can copy my frame, just like with other geometry and other files, and say that I wanted to zoom in on this particular drawing to highlight something. We could manually increase the size of it, maybe to zoom in on the building or something like that. We could also actually scale it inside of the frame. If I knew I wanted to have that be 200% of the size of the first one, I could type that in transform, object transform scale, and then I could double the size of it. So it's gotten bigger. So that's nice. So say that you wanted to, let's say we wanted to create a series of circular callouts from this drawing that zoom in on different parts of it. We can create different shaped frames. The frame does not have to be a rectangle. So I can say I want an elliptical frame, let's say. I draw a circle for that. And then I can Control-D to place something inside. I can say that drawing is there. And when he comes in, he's going to fit to, he's larger than that frame, right? So I can reposition him within the frame. I can highlight a certain area of the frame. Let's say, again, I wanted to zoom in on this part of the building. Or show a particular edge or something like that. Oops. So now I could add a border to this frame if I wanted to. All the line weights and line work still is intact here. So let's say this is a call out. I could add a red box around it. So if we're in W mode, we can very quickly, oops, using the black arrow to reposition the frame. If you use the white arrow, it's going to just move the content inside. So that's where I tried to move the shape, and it was moving the content. So I could take this and position it here. I could copy this down a couple times. We can start to move that information around to highlight different parts of it, right? And then let's say that these tie back to, I hear you. We're almost done. I hope that this will serve you guys well. I'm going to up the line weight of this. I could even add a leader to this if I wanted to, just manually. I could draw a line over to highlight where it's being shown on the drawing, which is convenient. I can basically use the eyedropper tool to mimic the thickness of the line. I could add the same type of start and end points to it as I can in Illustrator, but in this case, it's more diagrammatic, so I can be, I'd want to do this in InDesign. So again, I could copy then that line down if I wanted to, reposition it so that it's showing different parts of the scene. You get the idea. So I'm just going to delete that. So then, last thing here, so we have that. We've positioned this, kind of on the scene. We could add text if we need to. Say drawing axonometric. It's obviously very small. Let's make that bigger. Maybe it's even bigger than that. And then we could say, that all the alignments here, if we turn our preview mode back off, and just very quickly align things with, and again, I'm just holding Alt and Shift as I'm copying these things around. Alt to copy it, and then Shift to give it a direction constraint, so that you have some, again, some legibility control. So, right, these are probably not the right scale for that, but you get the idea. So then the last thing we can do here is I'm going to put one more drawing in, and I'm going to put our site plan in, just for, and I'll even maybe rotate it. So you can rotate the drawing if it needs to be refit on the page. This is a no-no considering that this is a scaled drawing, but I'm resizing it so that it just fits within the context of the layout here. Again, I could make some alignment, make sure that things are aligning so that it just kind of looks a little bit nicer on the page. Add a text bubble to our drawing below that we just brought in. Say at whatever scale, right? Okay, so then the last thing I would say is, so we have a layout here, we have a sequence of drawings. Say that I wanted to not show the arrow that I have in this drawing, but I don't want to have to go back into Illustrator to move it. So I can click, while I have clicked this frame, this is similar to how you can freeze things in CAD. I can right-click this and go to Object Layer Options. And within Object Layer Options, it's showing me all the layers that is in the Illustrator file that I can toggle on and off if I want to. So I know that I was specific about where I drew that arrow. So I can go into my layers and just turn that off and click Preview, and it will only turn it off in that viewport. So say I have one drawing that has 7 or 8 layers of diagram information on it that I've overlaid, knowing that I can then aggregate it in InDesign. So what I can do is just toggle those layers on and off depending on the view that I'm in. And notice again that didn't change, it didn't turn the arrow off in these other views. Let's say in this particular case, even though this is a copy of this drawing, I don't want that arrow on in that particular view, but I want it on in that view. I can go to Object Layers, I can turn Diagram Line off, and we're good to go. So You can very quickly siphon out information, organize line work. Layers are your friend because it helps you at the back end and the front end. And then we could export this file. Let's delete the second page. Export. Did that a little bit quickly. File, export. The export option in InDesign gives you a few more options than if you type Control-P, which is to print. So export allows you to choose if you want a print PDF or an interactive PDF. Generally, you're going to want a print PDF for the sake of what you're plotting. Question? So an interactive PDF, you should be able to embed links into, and you can put an animation in there if you want to. If you're doing a digital presentation or you have a digital component of your presentation, that should allow you to be able to have live links and things in the file itself, which is nice. Yes, question?
I tried that one because my PDF had a video on it and it wouldn't read it. PDF, say, interactive. Was he thinking it was my computer that didn't read it and I read it somewhere else? Or?
Maybe. It might have been a link situation. Honestly, I'm not. I want to research a little bit some of the troubleshooting for that because I had that problem before too. It might be something that you'd have to like host the video on a Vimeo or something like that so that there's a link that it can pull to. And then you need to have an internet connection so that the thing could actually pull it up. If you embed it into the PDF, then there's some link, something was wrong with the link. I'm not sure what, but maybe we could look at it more specific to what you were trying to do. But so for the sake of this export, I'm just going to say print PDF, Axon views, put that in model views. We'll say save. And then the last thing that we can do here is you can toggle default high quality print is great. If you were ever in a situation where you needed a small file size and something is just huge, you could do smallest file size. That's potentially fine. What that does is it changes the compression of the drawings here. This is actually a pretty good resolution. This is trying to say, all right, I'll be the smallest file size, but I'll keep the resolution of these various things high enough that when it prints, it should be okay. 100 starts to hover at not great, but 150 and 300 would be fine, I think, for anything you'd print and anything that you'd see on screen in particular. So toggle those settings. If you go to high quality, this is going to be up to a much higher PPI, which is fine for the sake of printing, unless, again, the lower that file size, obviously, the less time it takes to process, and it saves you a little bit of stress. So we can click export. And it's got a few drawings in it, so it's going to take a second to create itself. If you're ever trying to export something from InDesign and it's taking a long time, you can go to Utilities in the Window submenu and go to Background Tasks and pull that up. And what that will do is, actually, this looks like it exported just fine and it just didn't preview. It will show you the progress meter of what's exporting. So again, if you have 7, 8, 9 drawings and they're really heavy, it's probably going to take a while to export. And this will just give you peace of mind that it is slowly getting there, rather than it crashed. Where did it go? I don't know what's happening, because there's not an immediate readout for InDesign showing you that it's processing something. So if I go back to my model views folder, there should be a PDF there. Axon views. Open that up. Marquee zoom. Good to go. Does that make sense? Okay. Question? Mm-hmm. So again, I would say you can do this in Illustrator, depending on the type of drawing that it is. Generally, I would try to utilize, what's that? Good, because generally for high-level labeling, you'll want to use InDesign if you can, kind of like what we were doing with our drawing titles. So you can, question?
Oh, because he was asking about text. Sometimes I'll do my text in Illustrator and then bring it into InDesign and then have to add text in InDesign. And then you have to match it. But I I just realized if you put the text in its own layer in Illustrator, when you come into InDesign,
Yep.
you can turn it off.
You can turn it off. Yep. That's, in fact, if you need text as a reference point for what you're drawing in Illustrator, that's a great way to do it. Keep it on its own layer. Turn it off once it gets to InDesign so that all the layers, all the size of the text is the same in InDesign. That's definitely good practice. So what you can do is, let's say we have, well, let's say this text, I've double-clicked it. The T gets highlighted when I've highlighted that text there. I can change that to whatever color I want. Let's say it's red. So now I want these to also have that same property. So when those are selected, if I were to try to mimic that property right now, what it's actually going to do is it's going to change all these boxes to, it's going to change the boxes to red, which is super annoying. But what you can do is change, as long as you click the T here and make sure that that's what's being selected, you should be able to go, and then it changes the text color. So another thing that you can do is, and again, with the eyedropper tool, say this is italics or a different size. Let's fit that to the text frame. So I want these to be the same. We'll make sure that text is selected, and then we go back in there, and it should, oops. Oh, I was on a tear. Ah, shoot, okay. There is a way to make sure that all the properties get matched. If I were to select, if I go into the selection itself and select the text like this, and then go to that, it will change it. But there is a way to do it globally as well.
Maybe because it was like in the bounding box.
Say that again?
Maybe because what you're matching it with is in the bounding box.
So,
Try just the two. Yeah, those two.
oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, I bet that is right. So we want to make sure there's text there. Then we click this. Oh, bummer. That was a good thought, though. That troubleshooting approach was the right approach. Yeah, so I think if we, I'll find the way to globally do that, and I can add it to a video or email you guys or something. But yeah, try to keep your text and like general diagram overlays that frame more intense drawings in InDesign. Use InDesign if you can to lay out, again, these larger compositions. Be aware when you right-click that you can toggle the layers, which is really helpful, and try not to draw anything too detailed in InDesign. That's not generally what it's used for. You'll want to use the other programs for that kind of thing. So, any other questions for now? Okay, there's a lot of information today.